Chinese Premier Li Keqiang says Beijing supports the Hong Kong government's actions to end violence and chaos in the city. Mr. Li is the highest-profile Chinese official to speak out on the unrest that has gripped Hong Kong for 3 months.
中国政府坚定不移地维护一国两制、港人治港，高度支持，而且支持特区政府依法止暴制乱，恢复秩序，也是为了维护香港的长期繁荣稳定。要相信中国人有能力、有智慧办好自己的事。
The unrest has taken a toll on Hong Kong's economy. Today, ratings agency Fitch lowered Hong Kong's credit rating for the first time in over 20 years, citing doubts about the financial hub's stability.
Fitch downgraded Hong Kong's sovereign debt rating from a AA+ to a AA with a negative outlook. And it's the first ratings agency to downgrade Hong Kong since the wave of protests began in June.
However, Hong Kong Chief Executive Carrie Lam says she disagrees with the move. Speaking on a visit to the mainland, she said she's already taken the first step towards restoring order.
And 2 days ago, Mrs. Lam bowed to one of the protesters' demands by withdrawing the extradition bill that originally triggered the rallies.
But protesters say that's only one of their 5 demands, and so they're not letting up pressure on the government. And this weekend, groups are again planning to target Hong Kong International Airport.
And it will be the 14th consecutive weekend of protests. And tonight, violence has broken out again. Police fired tear gas, rubber bullets and pepper spray at protesters outside Prince Edward MTR station in Mongkok.
Let's go over to our correspondent, Leong Wai Kit. He joins us now. Wai Kit, what can you tell us about the latest situation? What kicked off the trouble?
Well, the simple answer, Steve, is that people are still unhappy that their 5 demands are not met, but primarily people are still very upset with police whom they say use too much force, too much brutal force when dealing with protesters. I'm outside Central MTR station, and if you can see behind me, there's a group of people. They're not standing there to cross the road. They've been standing there for the past 1.5 hours shouting slogans at police officers, shining their laser beams at the police officers. Now, if you look to my right, which is to your left, you will see that the police officers are standing at a distance from them. Now, earlier the police were standing just across the street, but they have been taunted very intensely by the people standing across them. They've been shone at with laser beams. Now, earlier, your question, Steve, what sparked this anger? Really, depending on when you ask me, my answer to you will be different, because every week developments arise. And this latest episode, this latest anger point is the August 31st protest. Now, police had stormed into the Prince Edward MTR station on August 31st, and there have been videos filmed by journalists as well as netizens that have gone viral online, purportedly showing police officers beating up passengers. Now, police, of course, have said that these are not passengers, these are protesters, because based on their professional judgment, they say that these protesters have changed out of their black uniforms and taken their gear out and then masqueraded as passengers. But the people having none of this, they want the MTR at Prince Edward Park, they want the MTR staff to reveal CCTV footage within the station so that it can be all clear for all to see whether or not the police are telling the truth about the alleged arrests. So really, for tonight, the flashpoint, the anger point is the August 31st police action for storming into Prince Edward MTR station to arrest passengers or protesters.
Waikis, so judging from tonight, does it seem like protests are likely to carry on this way, despite the conciliatory move made by Carrie Lam this week?
Well, that's a very good point, and it's very difficult to tell because, Glenda, for the past week, every night we've been seeing skirmishes, we've been seeing people gathering outside Mongkok police station, taunting police, we've been seeing tear gas being fired. If tonight is the only night that has such violent skirmishes, then it's very clear that this is the people's reaction to Mrs. Carrie Lam's concession to withdraw the extradition bill fully. But because we've been seeing this throughout the week, it's very hard to tell whether tonight's protests by violent protesters, whether or not this is momentum that's playing out. It's very hard to tell. It is more indicative when we look at events tomorrow and on Sunday, Saturday and Sunday, because that would be a bigger indication as to whether people react well to Mrs. Carrie Lam's concessions, or whether or not they're stepping up their level of violence in rebellion against her suggestions.
Kit, speaking of their reactions, you were actually at a peaceful rally earlier this evening and spoke to demonstrators there. What was their response to Mrs. Lam, what she had said about an olive branch and the first step of trying to resolve the crisis?
Well, Steve, I tried to speak to as many people as possible before the demonstration, the rally started. Most of them tell me the same thing. They want all 5 demands to be met. But I also get a mix of reactions. Some did say that they feel heartened that the first demand has been met, and some are hopeful that if they continue to voice their opinions and come out to give their views, they're hoping that Mrs. Lam could eventually listen to all other 4 demands. However, majority of people whom I spoke to say they don't have much faith in Mrs. Lam. Those I spoke to say that they've lost trust in her. They say that, they tell me that they don't think Mrs. Lam has control over the situation anymore, despite Mrs. Lam saying that she and her government still has full control of the situation. So you can see that people are starting to mistrust her. And of course, Mrs. Lam has also asked Hong Kong citizens to step forward to take part in the peaceful dialogue so that they can solve a slew of problems such as income inequality, housing problems. Some of the people I spoke to say that they welcome this move, but they say that they're not sure whether or not they will be selected to take part in the dialogue. They say that people who are selected to talk to Mrs. Carrie Lam would have a political leaning or would support her in the first place. So you can see that people, although they react sometimes positively to Mrs. Carrie Lam's move, there is still distrust among Hong Kong citizens for her.
All right, many thanks for that update. Kit speaking to us from Hong Kong.